Welcome to the Leader More podcast. Our motive is to pass on what we've found helpful over the years through leading teams, running operations, and dealing with life's challenges. We hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm Daniel from High Performance Leaders. On this episode, I had the privilege of talking with Nicola Reilly, who has spent over 25 years teaching and leading within the school system. The views and opinions expressed by Nicola are her own and are shared in a personal capacity and are not as an official spokesperson of the Department of Education. Let's get into the episode. Welcome, Nicola.
How are you?
Yeah, good. Warm welcome. So
Thank you very much.
25 plus years in the education department or system, secondary teaching and deputy, and now into acting principal work. So teaching, always wanted to be a teacher, or how did you fall into that?
Okay. I did always, from about 8 years old, wanted to be a maths and PE teacher. I know, that was my sport, love of maths, love of PE. But my family, I'm a farmer's daughter, grew up in beautiful Somerset. I often laugh and say I grew up in 17th century England because we had very clear goals of boys, what my brother did, what we did. And my family were all about work. You work hard. That's where that's what we grew up with. And so education was always, you went to school, but we actually sometimes stayed at home to help on the farm, things like that. So education was never a high priority. So although I wanted to be a teacher, that idea quickly left. I think I just sort of had it at the back of my mind for a very long time. And then when I look back at my education, I feel like every decision I made was a bad one. So in the UK, we have what we call GCSEs, which is the end of year 11. The GCSEs I chose now, I look back and think, what on earth was I thinking? Then I did A-levels. Again, I looked and did 3 A-levels thinking, what on earth was I thinking of those? And then I went off and did accountancy. So I went and did accountancy and did a bit of training there, and then thought, no, I'll go to university. And I was on a university teaching degree, but I didn't want to spend 4 years away from home. So I changed it to a 2-year HND. Then I ran my own business, making ball gowns and wedding dresses. And then I worked for Trust House Forte, multinational hospitality. And I'm sitting thinking, oh my gosh, so this is this is my world. Every decision, and I'm changing my mind every 6, 12, 18 months. Like I've no idea really. And then I come traveling around Australia. And the key moment for me, I was sat in a youth hostel in Cairns, and I'm there having a moment of, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? And I have been a bit dramatic in there. And I'm sat there going, okay. And somebody says to me, what do you want to do? Quit your whinging palms. What do you want to do? And I'm going, I want to teach. But to teach, I'd have to go back and do a 2-year degree and then a 1-year postgrad. And the thought of spending another 3 years away from home, university, was not appealing. And I have no idea who they are. So whoever they are, thank you so much. They said, I think in the UK, you can do a 2-year conversion now. And there were a couple of universities that were offering it. Well, I had no idea of this. And so when I got back after traveling, I went back, and absolutely right, there were 2 universities, Bristol and Huddersfield. And I contacted Huddersfield and said, I want to come and do your course. And I went into business education. So that was my sort of avenue in. And I went for an interview and said to the person interviewing me, I need you to let me know here and now if I'm in. And they're like, no, we'll wait through the process. And I said, yes, but I have to hand my notice in for my job. And if you don't tell me now, I will start the course 2 or 3 weeks later. And the problem is I don't want to start the course. And they went, okay, you're in. And that was it. So I literally had 4 weeks to handed my notice in, packed up my job, put my life in my car, and then I went off to Huddersfield. Yeah. And it was beautiful, amazing. And 2 years, phenomenal. And then I got a job. So all of my decisions, all what I thought were my bad decisions, like they ended up meaning that when I went for my first interview, in those days in the UK, in the private system, it's a day of interviews. Like you don't just have, over here just it's like a 20-minute whatever. It's a day. You go in and you meet different people, your student panel, you have your principal interviews, you have lunch, but you teach a lesson. So I ended up having sort of 5 or 6 different processes. And one of the teaching of the lesson, they give you a topic that you're teaching. And because I had all this experience of life in different things, I was able to bring real world into the classroom. And that was the difference. They said to me, that was what made you the number one candidate, as opposed to somebody else who was probably a little bit better educated or whatever. It was the practical.
life skills,
So all of the different decisions, all the wrong decisions I thought I had made, and everybody's going, at that time they came together, you know what? You can't make a wrong decision in life. And I always say that to students, whatever choice you make, it just sets you up for something better down the line. So that was my, what got me to teaching, my passion for it. I also love, no day is the same. I know people go, oh, you're always teaching the same thing. Yeah, you teach the same thing once a year, but no day is the same. Every classroom is different students, you're responding. It's just amazing. It's just lovely.
Yeah. Well, I imagine too, just the different issues that pop up, and particularly now, like, from a deputy and a principal point of view, like, you're probably problem solving issues most of the day.
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
I don't know how many to go into. I'm looking at what does a normal day look like? In schools over here in Australia, in the public system, the principal, like the way the system is structured in some of the schools I've worked in, you've got a principal who's like a level 6. You then have, depending on the size of the school, you might have a level 5 associate principal or 2 of those, and then you have level 4 deputies. And again, like every school is slightly different. Then you have level 3s, which are either holers, head of learning areas, or what we call program coordinators, and they lead then teams. And in the school that I'm substantive for, there are 4 deputies, and we all have different roles. So one of them is a deputy of teaching and learning. So their role is very much looking at strategies and systems that support teaching in the classroom. And they might look at professional learning. They might look at sort of the latest research. Somebody else's role is very much operational. So they deal with the exams, they deal with timetabling. An associate principal deals with the staffing and, again, timetabling structure. So there's a lot of things. My role is students, so student services. And that's been my space when I first went into teaching. So right at the very beginning, even though I was in a private school, I was in a boarding school. So I started off as a house tutor. They have house systems. Then I was an assistant boarding house mistress as well as a teacher. And I lived on site. And then I was a house mistress. And then you go up through the roles or ranks that way. And so in student services, you are usually dealing with the day-to-day. I only deal with, you've got a phenomenal team below me. There were, year coordinators, program coordinators, but anything tricky comes up the line. So if there's any tricky parent, any situation, people can't suspend. It has to be a deputy that suspends. So if anybody comes along and says, oh, this has happened, I think there's a suspension, they usually talk it through with the deputy to check, what would be consistent and fair to make sure that that's there. They would still have, the programs coordinator would still have conversations with the parent, unless it was a tricky situation, that might be a deputy. Really tricky, you hand up to the principal, because at the end of the day, the principal needs to know anything that is coming their way. So
but
that
the
way.
day-to-day running is coming from those deputies, right?
Day-to-day running, well, mostly.
Yeah.
There's a team, nothing happens by anybody. Everybody is part of that process. So with the day-to-day running stuff, in the student central team, you'll have admin, you'll have people like a psychologist maybe, you might have school nurses, you may have... year coordinators, program coordinators, there's teams of people. So nothing has happened individually. My job as a deputy, and as my team has really, really developed and is extremely competent and brilliant at what they do, I find that I've got much more time to be strategic. Yeah. So it's that balance between dealing with the day-to-day. That has to come first with students, obviously, but because they are so good at their job, it gives me much more time to go, okay, what are we doing with this? What does that look like? What can I do as a leader? My job is to remove barriers so everybody else can do their job. If you do that well, then, the processes and systems are in place that help everybody. Yeah. So that's what you really want to do.
That move from teaching into deputy, was that pretty natural? It's something you knew you wanted to do, or?
It was for me, because obviously in the UK, I was house mistress, so you were at that level of what I would call a program coordinator, and you were teaching at the same time. When I was in my substantive position, I was, again, doing program coordinator and teaching role. So I was 0.6 teaching, 0.6 program coordinator, 0.4 teaching. And then when you get up to the next level as a deputy, I still taught. And I loved the teaching side of it. I was teaching ATAR, year 12 ATAR, and I was extremely reluctant to let that go. Other deputies don't teach, and it's common for deputies not to teach. But I was like, I just want to hold on to that classroom because they are so great. The students are phenomenal. And it means that you can go into a space and then go, I don't have to worry about the world. For this hour, my focus is on business or accounting or economics or whatever it was. And then you go back out and deal with whatever comes your way.
Yeah, and then two different roles as well, although it's in the same space. But
very different.
Yeah, they are very different. Yeah. And, you know, like you said, switching off and going back to the reason why you got into it, you know, to teach and to pass on stuff. Like,
except I would say, one of the questions you asked is what keeps you there? What keeps you going? Yeah. And about 3 years ago, I don't know if you know, there's a beautiful lady called Holly Ransom, and she's a Perth girl, but she does a lot of her work similar to this over in the US. Okay. And she did a month trial of leadership, and every day there was a different task to do. And one of those tasks was to go, what's your purpose? What's your why? So if somebody asks you in life, why do you get up in the morning? What motivates you to get up? And I've sort of was chatting to friends again, okay, what is it? What do I want to do? And I've done a lot of the Brene Brown, you know, the 100 values, and I've done a lot of different sort of stuff like that. And I'm going, I want a why. And I literally was, for days, this was bugging me, what my why is. And eventually, a girlfriend of mine, we were chatting, and I went, okay, and it was a sentence. It was about sort of, I don't know, 15 words of my why. And I went, okay, I now need it to be punchy. Okay. And it's something I'm going to talk about in a minute with what I'm doing. But my why is unlocking potential. That is my reason I get up in the morning. So when you say yes, the deputy and the teaching role are very, very different, but fundamentally they're the same. Fundamentally, whatever I do, it is about unlocking potential. It's about building capacity in somebody else. So with students, you're building capacity in their work and trying to support them to get their goal or whatever that might be. You know, you're trying to say they don't, whether it's, I don't know, economics, and they don't understand aggregate demand. Your job is to help support them so that they can manage to do that. As a leader, whether it be a level 3, level 4, level 6, whatever it is, my job is to go, right, what is it that you need to do? And how can I support you to do that? So building capacity in others is just the number one thing that a leader does. Because if they get that right, everything then blossoms from it. So for me, unlocking potential is the reason why I stay, because every single day there is somebody to support. And I'm not saying I have the answers to unlocking everybody's key, but what I can do is go, how can I support you in my little way? And then if I can do my little bit and everybody else does their little bit, you actually end up building the capacity of everybody. You just raise standards generally. And I think that's so important.
Well, and it's a pure motive too, in the fact that it's about others, right? Like
without even realizing, yes.
Yeah, you're there to help others achieve what they want to achieve.
I want to unlock my potential too as well. So therefore, there's a question: is how does that happen? You know, we've gone through life, and I've had moments where I've gone, you know, am I doing the best I can do? What else do I need to do, and how do I need to be better at who I am? Because if one is not a reflective person. Yes, we talk about, there's several different professional learnings, and we talk about Johari's window. I don't know if you've ever heard of Johari's window. And there's this big blind spot, you know, what is it that everybody else can see about me that I cannot see about myself?
Or I don't want to see, yeah.
Or you don't want to see. Now, if you don't want to see, the question is, why don't you want to see it?
Correct.
Is it because you know it's there and you just don't want to admit it yet? Or is it because you're so blind about it that you don't realize, and that is preventing you from being the best version of yourself? So for me, I'm one of 6 children, brothers and sisters. There is always somebody to identify your blind spot. Yeah, like in growing up, you know, it doesn't matter who it is. Yeah. There is always somebody.
No filter. They'll tell you straight.
The family, you know, it's like all families. You know, I can say it to my brothers and sisters, but nobody else can say it. You know, that sort of pulling ranks within. So that's always been something I've been incredibly reflective, because I think I've been, you know, the family environment has made you go, no, you can't do that because of whatever reason. And so I have always wanted to go, right, what is it that I'm doing now? What do I need to do next? and you talk about the step between teacher to deputy. Now, it's not one step. There are several steps in that process. And a lot of people talk about, I think I'm ready to be a deputy. How do I think? It's like me at the moment. I think I'm ready to be a principal. I think I'm ready to be a substantive principal. So what do I need to do to show the world that I'm ready to be that next step? And the answer is you have to act in that role to show that you're ready rather than just tell people I'm ready.
Prove it, through your actions.
Prove it through your actions. And the problem is then that you then need opportunity to do that. How do you do that? What is the process that you would go through to get that? Part of it is professional learning. Part of it is understanding the system. But part of it is actually putting yourself out there going, actually, I want to be there. I want to do that. Because nobody knows the job of any job unless you're doing the job. You know, people are like, oh, I know what teaching's like. You don't know what teaching's like unless you're a teacher. You know, as we talked about earlier, teaching is not 9 to 3.
Yeah, well, let's go through some myths here.
Okay, let's go through some
Here's
myths.
your time. This might be a bit of therapy.
Yeah,
getting
okay.
this out.
How much time have you got? How much are you charging? Teaching is never 9 to 3. Okay. Most teachers, I know you'll have people that go off and have the time. Most people do not have the 2 weeks holiday. They use the time to set themselves up for the next term. For me, I do a lot of strategic thinking in the holidays because you need time without interruptions. And in a school, your life is dictated to by a bell. You know, every 30 minutes, an hour, whatever the time is, you're going somewhere else, you're doing something else, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a classroom, whether it's lunchtime, whether it's detention, whatever it might be. So sometimes to be productive, you need big blocks of time. And that's usually done in the holidays because the holidays are the space where you can be uninterrupted. The preparation, most teachers don't walk into a classroom and say, okay, we're just going to open up the book to page 65 and you're going to sit there and do question 1 to 4, because that is a surefire way to have a disruptive classroom. You know, students need variety. Students need to have an opportunity to work, peace, but they also need an opportunity to share what their thoughts are, share their experiences. Great teachers, we talk about teaching being relational. Everybody knows that. If I asked you, what do you remember? Who was your best teacher at school? You would have been someone you connected with, whether it be on the rugby pitch, whether it be in the classroom. It's somebody you connect with.
Right.
And they make a difference in your life that you don't even necessarily realize. And so teaching is extremely powerful in the relational side. And I know they go, oh, AI is going to replace. It cannot replace what a teacher brings into that classroom. So when a teacher is in there, the more they build relationships with students, the more successful they will be. What other myths are there? I love this myth. Primary school teachers get paid less than secondary school teachers. That's always a lovely one. A parent did email me and say, because of the school you're in, you get paid more. And I'm like, I just want to make it really clear, really don't. I am on a part of a system. This is what you get paid.
Yeah.
I don't get any paid, only overtime. Oh, you get paid during the holidays. Okay, I get an annual salary that's split over 26 weeks. That's what I get.
Yeah, but I think even too, like, say for instance, you're in a leadership role or you're in any role, like you normally have a line manager and then you've got your team underneath you. With you, teachers have got that lovely dynamic of, I've got a line manager, I've got a deputy, I've got a principal above me, whatever it is. I've got my little team of kids that I'm looking after or area I'm responsible for. But then I have all these parents that can give me feedback that probably feel entitled, which you can imagine why, because, they're paying for a service and they want to see their children and they've got the blinkers on just for their own children to make sure that they get the best out of it, where you're looking at, a whole scope of 1,500 or however many kids, like that would be a tough dynamic to deal with that.
It is. And most parents are beautiful and gorgeous. Most parents are understanding. The trouble you have sometimes is when a parent may not understand the whole system. So from their perspective, it seems straightforward and easy, but actually there are other complexities, whether it be timetabling constraints or staffing constraints. So, we have to deal with that. The lovely thing we talk about any school, every school, doesn't matter what school it is, whether it's private, whether it's public, every school has the same 3 ingredients. You have staffing that have as humans, we've got our own complexities. You have students, for me, they're navigating adolescence. You know, there's not many environments where you have 11 or 12-year-olds and 18-year-olds all in the same, following the same process and things.
That's a good
And
point.
you have parents who absolutely want the best for their child. You know, so you're navigating all of these sort of complexities. And mostly, I think we do it right most of the time for most students, most families. Sometimes schools isn't right for a child. The mainstream school isn't right. We have beautiful year 9 students who, you know, they want to go into a trade, you know, but they can't do anything until they're at the end of year 10,
Yeah.
you know, or, you know, for TAFE courses or pre-apprenticeships things. So it's about going, how can we support, how can we navigate what is best for that child? Because every teacher, they want what's best for the children. And parents want what's best for the children. So everybody really is focused on the same thing. It's just the way you get there.
Is that really easy to pick up that a kid is going to go into trades, or you can see that they would probably flourish in a situation like this instead of an academic sort of, it's easy to pick up?
It's fairly easy. They tell you, you know, they're very articulate. So yes, and they often say, Miss, I don't like school. You know, students will often say that. And then what is it you don't like? You know, what is it that isn't right for you? Is it the fact that, you know, they are sitting in a classroom and they are at their best when they are out on the soccer pitch, you know, or they are at their best when they are in an art studio, or whether in the design technology studios, or in the you know, when they're doing something practical with their hands. And you often see that. You see some students who academically, in what we call the mesh subjects, the main maths, English, science, humanities subjects, they just never seem to connect with it. Put them in one of the elective subjects and they just thrive. And I think the key to any schooling is, what is it that we can do to support a student to thrive? You know, what could that look like? And so, you know, I don't know what it might look like. The schools now, there are a lot more alternative educations for young children, and there are care schools that used to be for sort of 10, 11, 12. They're actually coming in for younger students, and I think that's great. You know, because the more we can get a young person to aspire to do their thing, the more likely they are to be a really great citizen. Because that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great citizens.
Well, it makes me think too, your comment about, you know, the relationship stuff, and particularly for those mesh subjects, you know, prior to, you know, year 11 and 12, is like the importance on that for someone who maths mightn't be their thing. But hey, I love the teacher, I love the class, and that helps me get through. Or the flip side, which kids are great at pointing the finger, you know, and that's one thing I've found as a parent. It's like, okay, well, why aren't you going so great in science? Oh, it's the teacher. It's like, hang about. Like, is it really? Like,
that's a myth. Yeah, it's always the teacher.
Yeah, correct. And it's an easy finger point from a kid's point of view. But I'd imagine too that would be a hard situation for teachers to navigate, that relationship with kids. You know, you want them to, I suppose, you know, understand where you're coming from, have some boundaries, but you also want to connect with them. But I'm sure, and kids are manipulative, they can take advantage of that from time to time, you know, as in just, I can get away with it because Miss loves me, or whatever it is, you know.
Most kids are not that manipulative.
Okay.
Most young people are amazing, and they are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I've got a lovely little bubble. They all laugh at me. I'm in, you know, unicorns in rainbow land. I think most young people are phenomenal. I think you hear often, the youth of today. The youth of today are fabulous. They have a lot of potential. And schools' jobs is to help them reach that potential, whatever that might look like. And the problem, I think, sometimes is that we have a system, and this is my opinion, you know, we have a system where it cannot possibly suit every child. So great schools look and go, how can we fit outside the box? What can we do that's just a little bit different for that child? Because it may be that, I mean, I have year 10 students that are doing certs at other places, at TAFE, just a little leadership course, just to keep them inspired, because actually they only need success in one place. They don't have to be brilliant at everything. We all need to find what it is that helps us get up in the morning, our why. And great schools, and I think most schools out there are phenomenal at doing this. They offer those extra things. So we all do the maths, English, science. We all do the art. We all do the the woodwork, metalwork, PE. But a lot of schools have different programs. And I think as a parent, when you talk about parent engagement, by looking at what school would fit my child. I've worked in the UK, some of the best schools academically in the country. Like, they were literally number one of the thing. I also worked in best schools in Australia. But those best schools are not suited to every child. So even though it could be the best school academically or the best school sporting, it may not be the right school for a child. And children will thrive in the right environment for them. So as a parent, and I've done it, I've gone, you know what, I'm going to take my child out of that school and put them in a different school. And, what works for you. And there's nothing wrong with the school, nothing wrong with the school at all. My child, at this point in time in their educational career, needs something different. And your school doesn't provide it for that child. Therefore, I'm going to go and look somewhere else to get what they need. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the more that we look at that honestly and go, what is right for my child? Some parents do have 3 different children in 3 different schools because they've done exactly that, and they've had their successes are there. So it's about looking for what's right in the education system to suit your child. And you're never going to get it right all the time. We do our absolute best, but we are still navigating people, and people are interesting.
It's just a tough dynamic, You look at, say, from a leadership role, a general manager, operations manager, you're dealing with adults, right?
Yep.
And sometimes, if you've been in those positions, you can relate. Sometimes you wouldn't call them adults because they can be just children.
Yeah.
But you were dealing with, like you said, a broad spectrum of 12 to 18, 12 to 17-year-old kids.
And then all the parents that go on top of that.
Parents, that engagement with parents, what works best?
Easy. Honesty. Be honest. That's all you need to do.
Okay.
Communicate with parents, because nobody, I obviously talking about secondary school, very few parents don't really want a phone call from the school. Because if you get a phone call from the school, it's either that there's been an accident, the child's hurt, nobody wants that, or there's been a little bit of trouble, nobody wants that. Normally when there's great things happening, we normally send emails or letters home. But when you get the phone call, I have one parent, the child was in year 7, he was a little bit naughty, didn't always do as he was meant to do. And the parent, they see my number pop up and they're like, what did the little bugger do this time? Yeah. And I'm like, actually he's done this, right? And you love those kind of parents because you know that the schooling and the parent are on the same process. Mm-hmm. I used to phone him up to say, he's done nothing this time. There's been a little injury, or he's done nothing this time. I just want to tell you he's done amazing stuff, because I don't want the only phone call you get from me to be that. What's he done? For me, though, what we want to do in schools is we all make mistakes. A little story, diverting slightly. A student made a mistake online. Okay, year 11. Said something that they shouldn't have said online. And I had a word with them saying, look, what do you think that sounds like? Oh, yeah, but nobody was meant to see it. Well, guess what? It's now on my desk. Somebody has seen it, and they've sent it to me. So let's deal with it. And their first reaction is, am I going to be asked to leave the school because I've made a mistake? And I'm going, what do you mean? Why would you think that? They said, oh, yeah, they say that if you make a mistake, you have to leave. And I'm like, we all make mistakes. It's not about the mistake. I said, if everybody left that made a mistake, it would be a very small school. But actually what it is, it's not about the mistake you make. It's about how you deal with the mistake you make. How you respond. That is the most important thing we teach the young people. Because if we suspend a child because they have, had a fight or have done something wrong, and they've gone, I'm so sorry, and then they come back and they go, I'm never doing that again. That was, I've really reflected. And the parents are going, we've reflected. We've had these conversations. And then you never get any trouble from that child. Yeah. What a great system. Because you're showing, there are consequences for your actions. And if you know there are consequences for your actions, then absolutely. We have had parents, though, that will say, my child wouldn't do that. It's on camera, your child did. No, my child wouldn't do that. That's not my child. That's my... I'm like, it actually is, and they're the difficult conversations to have. Because you're then arguing with a parent about something you've got, like, look, this is a picture. They are there. That is them. And I've had parents go, no, not my child. Okay, right. What do you do with that? What can you say?
What do you do?
You depending on where you are, we've had people externally and things. You basically, okay, well, thank you very much. We believe it's your child. We have sufficient evidence. We're not a court of law. People go, they're innocent until proven guilty. Okay, well, what is my evidence? If I've had a couple of students and a teacher seen it, I've got more than enough evidence to go, actually, I have other witnesses. They have said it's happening, so this is now the consequence. And sometimes you just put consequences in place. Most parents want to be listened to. Most parents are happy if they've been heard. So, and I think that's the same for all people. If you've got something that's a little bit frustrating, you want to be heard. And we talk about parents as partners. Years ago, the old-fashioned adage, it takes a village to raise a child. It absolutely does. Parents can't do it on their own. If you have a single parent, their job is 10 times more difficult than there is a family unit there. And with, other families like aunts, uncles, grandparents, things like that. You see that when you've got that whole family unit, that child knows what they can get away with, what they can't. And it's the same at school. The moment the parents come in and go, actually, the school and the parents are talking and we're all on the same page, that child, they know the boundaries, and children need boundaries and they need that process. So, I know that parents fight for their children, and I've done it too. Not been my finest moment, I have to say, but let's put that to the side. But the reality is that if you know where parents are coming from, you're looking to go, what is the solution out of this? Yeah, it can't be a them versus us, because we don't win then. Nobody wins. Everybody's got the best outcome for the child. So how do we get to that best outcome, whatever that might look like, and we just have to go through the process, have those conversations. If you're honest with parents, people appreciate that. Nobody wants to be kept in the dark about anything. Because if you turn around and don't tell a parent, let's say an incident happened and you don't tell the parent, and then 6 weeks later a similar incident happened again, and then you tell the parent and you go, this is not the first time, the parent quite rightly will say, well, why didn't you tell me about that? Because if you told me about that here, I would have done something about it. Now, admittedly, there are a lot of things that happen in schools that you would not bother parents with. Yeah, there's a lot of tiny things that you just wouldn't. You'd be on the phone constantly. Actually, that's just not. It's not productive. It's not helpful. But when there is something that you go, actually, parents, we need you. Conversation. Bring the conversation in with that, because then you're much likely to get an early solution, and the early solution leaves everybody happier. And so that's really important, I think.
Some stories deserve to be remembered. So many achievements, lessons and stories go unrecognised. The challenges people overcome, the impact they have on others, and the contribution teams make are often never captured. That's why we created Leadership Recognition Stories, a way for businesses to recognise their people, celebrate their achievements, and capture the stories that help shape them. While gifts are appreciated, stories create something people can keep, share, and look back on for years to come. Training for those conversations, Nicola, is that something that education department and through university and so forth that was sort of done pretty well, or did you find that it's more exposure, more learning off your peers and people above? Yeah, definitely.
So I had, when I was first a program coordinator, I went into a meeting with a parent. And boy, did I do it wrong. Oh my gosh, did I do it wrong. I actually had asked for advice and followed the advice, even though I was thinking, I don't know. I followed the advice. Well, I learned quickly. So what I do and what we do at school is you never go into a meeting alone with a parent. That was the first thing I did wrong. Like I went into a meeting on my own and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no get out. I had nothing. I was so unprepared in this meeting. It did not go according to how I thought it was going to play out in my head, I can tell you. Anyway, so then what we do is for my training when I was deputy, I always had staff with me, but it was always somebody that was likely to be the next person in the process. So when I was a level 3 program coordinator, I'd have the year coordinator with me. And all the time, even though I may lead the meeting, they're there. they're contributing because obviously they would have a better day-to-day idea, but they're seeing how I'm leading the meeting,
they're
what I'm doing.
exposed to it. It's part of their development.
Yes, and it's always part of their development. And the same with the next level up. And it's the same with me when I've been in the meeting with principals where there's been a difficult conversation. The principals led it. I've been in there with them. And you've listened to the difficult conversations, and I've gone, I see what they've done there. And so the whole time I'm thinking, so it's normally through exposure that you get better at it. Those difficult conversations are never easy. And I have done training courses and you've had those role play examples. It's never quite, because the person you're role playing, they're always a bit kinder, they're always a bit nicer because they don't want you to be that difficult parent to them. So you do have training, but on-the-job training is by far more important because, again, every situation is slightly different. So you need to have flexibility. You need to pivot. You need to be able to go, okay, this situation here, what am I missing here? What am I not hearing from what you're saying? You know, we've had these conversations. We're still in the room. We're still saying our bit. You're still saying your bit, but we're not closing that gap.
Yeah,
there.
and just that cool process, because you've got that real world scenario where you can review it afterwards, whether it's in your head of, oh yeah, I like how they did this or did that, or hey, why did you do this, or are you concerned about this, or hey, that worked out well, or oh goodness, that was a train wreck. What would we do different next time, you know?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, but I am vulnerable in the meetings. I will say, look, you're going to need to give me time for it because I don't know the answer for this. I need to find out more. You know, you're saying this. Okay, that's not the information I have, but that's what you're saying to me. So I had a parent once turned up at school and the receptionist said, Nikki, there's a parent, they're not very happy. Okay, you know, don't go in the meeting alone. You know,
that would be the worst situation because you're not prepared. You don't know what it's necessarily about.
You don't know, but you know what? Again, just give people time, listen. So they came in the meeting, they were a little bit, you know, upset with the world and whatever. And we sat there and from their perspective, this is what their child had told them. So I'm like, okay, tell me it. Tell me all that I need to know because you're coming in here. Okay, I understand you're upset, but you're coming in here, but I don't know what the information you have, and you don't have all the information that I have. So we need to be in, but I have to listen to them because if you ever try and shut somebody down that they're not right or whatever, you know, it's going to go backwards. You've got to give people the time and space. And then anyway, I said, thank you very much. Let me listen, whatever. And then I had an email at 8:30 at night and then a phone call by 7:30. Don't do it. We found out more. We've stopped, you know. And then it was another meeting. It was a very different meeting.
Oh, that's good.
Because they were going, our child has now told us a little bit more information. And, you know, as with all people, you say what you think you need to say. And sometimes children, you know, don't always want to say everything. And that's one thing I've done with raising my girls, you know, always tell the truth. If you've done something wrong, say what you've done wrong because you'll be in half the amount of trouble if you keep something secret. And we've done that before with students. You know, somebody's done the wrong thing. It's taken 2 days for them to tell the truth. Okay, you know what? You're actually suspended now twice as long. You know, you're actually for not following instructions, being wasting time, you know, all of these things. Whereas actually if you said, it was me. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Again, it comes back to how you deal with. You do something wrong. We've all do something wrong. How do you deal with that following up? And so from you know, a process of, we have processes and policies we follow. When you know those, that helps because I can say, look, this is what I need to do here. This is happening.
That's your framework.
I'm going to go through this. It's going to be the same. And that was something I created at one of the schools, saying, okay, these are the usual misdemeanors, you know, the usual ones that anybody has. What are you going to do? If it's a year 7, you know, first at high school when something's happened, you're going to be a little bit more lenient than if it's a year 9 boy and this is his 18th time of having a fight. There's a different response. So I know I'm exaggerating there, but you know that idea. You need a similar framework so that if anybody else comes in, you can go, okay, I'm not giving you 2 days suspension and you 10 because actually there's a process that you can justify what you're doing and how you're going about it. Even though every situation is different, there is usually commonality between whatever happens. So follow the process, know the process, and don't rush. Because again, that meeting that I went into, where I thought I was very, I learned a lot more from that than I do from the successful ones. That was rushed. Looking back now, I should have taken more time. I should have found out more. I should have asked not only one person, but I should have asked other people's advice. There were so many things I could have done differently. And yes, we got over it. And yes, it was fine. And yes, but it definitely had a few sleepless nights because I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, that process is so important, isn't it? It's like, because it's hard. You emotionally, you want to do a good job. Like you hold yourself to a high standard. And then, hey, it doesn't come out how you wanted it to. Some emotions are there. You're probably, loading up on yourself too much, giving yourself a hard time about it. You get to a point where you're actually looking at it factually. Okay, well, what would I do different for next time and move forward, next job? What would I do?
And that's really important. And we talk, so a lot of time in when you're dealing with students, sometimes you're dealing with the stuff that is pretty heavy stuff, and someone says to me, how do you not take it home all the time? And there are some really hard conversations that you have, and so the things that you do take home, but there are also things you go, you know what, I'm going to do the best I can. And if I genuinely put the hand on heart going, I gave that my all. There was nothing I could have done. I could have done something differently, but at the time with the information I had, I did the best job I had. I have to be happy with that. I have to, because I cannot solve the world's problems. If there is a child that may not have much food, okay, well, let's provide them with food. Let's give them what they need to do. You don't want children to be disadvantaged in any way. But there are people that are disadvantaged. There are. And I cannot solve all those problems. So I can only do what I can do, but I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And if I do that, then hopefully I make a difference. And if you make that little bit of difference in that person's life, you're doing a good job. And for me, it's about learning how to do that. But it's not easy, because you do have some conversations that are very challenging.
Well, and just like what you were saying is your why is to unlock potential. And sometimes you're probably going to have to switch that off or understand that I can't do that for everyone as much as I would like to do.
I think you can, but it just might be different. It's smaller.
Okay.
So there are many steps. So, and that's the thing, you're unlocking potential. What does that person need at that point in time to remove a barrier for them, whatever that might be? So that always is the unlocking of potential. The unlocking potential isn't necessarily getting them an A grade to go on to, an ATAR of 95 to go on to UWA to do PPE or whatever it might be.
Well, that's wise, isn't it? So it doesn't become this overarching thing that you can never achieve, isn't it?
I had a beautiful conversation with we had a parent. He came to school, had a very complex, difficult background, without going into details, and they were, extremely, there had been domestic violence in the household. They had, there was instability with housing, that sort of stuff. And the child, they wanted to go for a scholarship, and I was the one writing a reference for the scholarship. And I said, look, tell me your story. So they told me a story. I said, okay, your story is a bit more extreme than I've ever heard of before. So in my head, I'm going, okay, how do I support this? And what evidence do I need to prove that what they're saying is right? Because, I have had situations where people have told me something, and then when you ask more clarifying questions, it's not quite as they originally said. So I'm over here going, okay, tell me something. So the parent goes, I'll happily. She brought in a foot, 12 inches of evidence, like literally piles of evidence. And after one or two, I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. I know enough. It's fine. No, let me show you this. Let me show you this. And we wrote the reference. And I have to say, it was a reference that I really wanted to put my heart and soul in, because I could see, one, this child had a massive amount of potential, a huge success opportunity. But two, this family had overcome more adversity than I've ever even heard of, phenomenal things. And when that child did get the scholarship, a female school, and it's worth a lot of money, like it was $20,000 a year for sort of 4 years or something, their education. The parent was just like, oh my gosh, in tears. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I didn't really do anything. All I did was listened and then wrote down what I heard into a reference. But that success, that child will have, I have no doubt. They will go off to university. They will have a difference in their life that will be phenomenal. And so for me, I never taught them. I've never been one of their teachers. I just did a little piece of their jigsaw puzzle in life. And I think when you do that, every school, there will always be that. And so every teacher, deputy principal, it doesn't matter who it is, they are always adding to a child's little jigsaw of life. And the more you can do that in a positive way, the more you are leading that child into something. And I often think you don't know the difference you make until years later. Somebody will say, you said this to me, and I will never remember it. That made a difference for me. And you're like, okay, I'm great. And you have no idea what you do. And I think we often say that to the teachers in the classroom. Don't underestimate the impact you have, because you may never be told, but you make a difference every single day. And that's really important for the teachers to know that what they're doing is important, and it is life-changing for some students.
Yeah, well, I imagine it would have been a rewarding day seeing the news of that.
Yeah, every day's a rewarding day.
Look, I just think of how difficult that would be, like people, teachers, turning up, being on all the time, understanding everything that you do, but like switching off, hard.
You see, but another myth, people have their break time. I rarely know any teacher that has a break time, recess, lunch. Teachers often say, I need time to just visit the bathroom, So that's another myth that we have lots of time.
You're just rushing around between bells.
You're constantly. And if in between, like, let's say lunch or something, you're then preparing your class for the next bit, or you're talking to students at your door and you're having a conversation. Those incidental conversations happen all the time.
So that's another element, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because during a day you don't get that little break where you can, and not a great look where if you're a teacher, not a great look if you're late to the class,
Never late.
No,
never late.
Yeah, so you've got to be
duty
there.
of care, so you're never late, you're on time.
Yeah.
So switching off, it's interesting because when we talked before about sort of stress levels, how do you need to switch off? I don't know if there's an organisation, Beyond Blue, and Beyond Blue often talk about rest is productive. And I've had a situation where I was not as restful as I should have been. Keep going, you'll get through the list. The to-do list gets longer and longer. And if I keep working hard, I'll eventually get through it. And the reality is you don't. And I probably learned a little bit of that the hard way. So for me, I spent a little bit of time at the end of 23. I call it press pause. I pressed pause. And it took me a long time to unwind. I was still on my emails. I was still, even though I was off work, I was still, because I couldn't, you have a lot of balls in the air that you're juggling, and you need them to land, and you don't want them to crash. You just don't. So you sort of doing what you can. But during that time, I then took time off for the next year to do my master's, because I was like, actually, I've had some time. I've pressed pause. I've had some rest. Now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what have I not done? It comes back to that blind spot. How can I be better at what I want to do? How can I be a better leader? How can I be a better person? How can I be a better teacher? What is it that I can do to upskill myself so that I can unlock potential more easily for more people, whatever that might look like. And I decided in 2024, I was extremely fortunate. I decided I was going to say yes. I was going to say yes to everything, because I'd had this time. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got so much. And I said yes to a few things. I asked for a secondment of a different school, and I was given a different school, extreme polar opposites experience. Beautiful school, phenomenal, very different, but absolutely, wow, such great culture, great students, great staff, beautiful place to work in. So every time I go, I'm back between the two. And every time I go one, I feel like I've never left. And then I go to the other and I feel like I've never left. Beautiful. I said yes to presenting at a conference. And like I say, my expertise in the teaching world has always been student wellbeing. Like I say, boarding house mistress. I've got postgrads in boarding education. As in student services. So that was always my thing. So I did a presentation. I started my master's and did that full time in a year, as well as working full time. So that had its moments, but that was great.
I'm just going to hit pause and do double now.
Yes, I did. That's exactly what happened, because what actually happened was in that press pause, I got my energy back, and I loved it. It was like, but the things I was doing was filling my cups, it wasn't empty. It wasn't draining. It was fabulous. And anyway, it's only a year, so how hard can it be? It's only a master's. It's easy. And I also then was successful in a course, a leadership course called Elevate. And that was sponsored by someone called Wazir, which is the Principals Association. Okay. Beautiful, phenomenal. And that 5 days of course, you were with the same people, but over about a 6-month period. And every day you were given a different book to read. Okay, beautiful. So I was given Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last, Culture Code. I'll think of another one in a minute. Atomic Habits, James Clear, Atomic Habits. So a few of these, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just filling your cup because you're going, wow, that's really interesting. And by doing all of these different things, I had this phenomenal year where I was like, everything I'm listening and learning is taking me to another level of who I am and who I actually want to be. What kind of person can I be that's better than what I was before? So for me, I am a real advocate of rest is productive. I used to, like I say, I used to work 6-7 days a week. Now I don't work on Saturdays. Unless I have to go somewhere, like unless you're supporting some function, I really, really, really do my best not to work on Saturdays. I try and get home by 6 o'clock. Now, again, school finishes at 3. Most staff have left by 4:30. The last hour is when a principal does a lot of the admin stuff that they have to do. So you've got that time. And then I sometimes work in the evening, but I try not to, because I have been at points where I have worked for a lot of hours. And I think I'm trying to be, ticking off that to-do list, but so many things get added that I just go, actually,
it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. One of the courses I went on, and I can't remember the quadrangle, but it was, high energy, high output or high performance, and you've got your quadrangle of rest. And at that point, they say, if you don't go in this one often, you end up being in it for a long period of time. And that's what I found when I pressed pause. I had been operating at,
just saving it up. You put it in the
saving
bank.
it, putting it in the bank. And then when you need to press pause. Yeah. So for teachers who, it is hard to switch off because you're dealing with those beautiful little people, young people. But you have to deal with, you have to switch off. In that Elevate course, the presenter said, if you don't switch off, it comes out somewhere else in your life. Okay, and you'll often hear people talking about that. It might come out in your own health. It might come out in your relationships, your family, your husband at home, that sort of stuff. But it will come out somewhere. So learning that actually I've done my bit and I've switched off, that is hard because you want to do so much more. But you have to. Rest is productive. And again, I think learning by pressing pause and just going, actually, I'm not going to do anything. That giving myself that genuine time meant I was so much better afterwards.
Well, it's just a great opportunity just to hit the brakes and go, okay, well, I've been on autopilot. I've been rushing through and fallen into all this stuff. And now I get the opportunity to go, well, hey, with a clear head, I can make some actual decisions on what I want to do. Is it the same? Great, it is. Or is it not? No, it's not. I want to do this.
Far more strategic, far more clever, far more effective, far more productive. And that is, you're then giving more to other people in a way that is much more sustainable. And it is interesting to go, how do you do that? And we don't get it right all the time. And I think people are very hard on themselves when they get it wrong.
Yeah, I can relate. I've done that twice now, right? And you run pretty hot and you're getting through a lot and you're doing, but you get to a point where you need to stop. You just feel it. But it's always been that great opportunity then to just pick something else. And you're right, there is a stigma there around, it's not a great thing to do, but it
is phenomenal.
It is a good thing to do. Probably, you're right. You shouldn't be, getting to that point. But there are benefits in every. There are so many benefits in those situations, isn't there? That teachers always giving to others, and and you were saying about that self-development stuff that you were doing and the leadership stuff. Is that hard for teachers, like to have the time to do that, but then also to the capacity?
I see people, again, I didn't for a while. And what I noticed was that I saw people that had done things and they were doing so much better than I was. And I'm going, what is it that they're doing that I'm not? And then you ask a few questions. When I did my press pause, I actually had an opportunity. I spoke to a principal. So I didn't get a job. So I went for a job in 2023, and I didn't get it. I was I was suitable but not recommended. So I was there. And what I found, I got feedback. And I found that they said, look, you're really good, but we don't know much about you. And I was like, okay. And I was at the point where I needed to press pause anyway. So it was a beautiful bit of good timing. And in my time when I was principal, I went, I want to speak to that principal. I want to ask more questions. So I phoned up and said, hi, don't know if you remember me. Okay, this is sort of 6 months later, but can I have an hour of your time? And the principal said, yeah, come on in. And they sat there down and I talked to them about the journey, my journey, their journey. And it was like really interesting. I then did that with about 7, 8 other principals. That was all done in term 1 of this 2024 when I was sort of doing my masters and doing other things. The time that those people gave me, they didn't know me. I was a random person going, hey, you've been recommended to me by so-and-so. Can I have your time? And that knock-on effect. The information they gave me, the time, the knowledge, the experience, invaluable to me. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to every one of their time. That professional learning, I learned so much from. And that was one of the triggers that made me go, actually, right, you've all told me something that there was common threads in what they were telling me. So if I want to become the principal that I think I want to become, I need to listen to what you're saying to me because you're identifying something in me that I can do better. Which is when I went and asked for the secondment, which is when I then did my master's, which is when I actually went and did some reliefs as well and, phenomenal things, and had a wonderful experience throughout all of it. But it was because people gave me time. And what I've then noticed is when I'm with the leaders, I've said to them, what are you doing? What are you doing for yourself? So I am now much more proactive at supporting the people that I lead to focus on themselves. Because you will not get as far as you think you will if you don't do that. Once I did my year, I applied at the end of the year for something called the APPP in the Department of Education, Aspirant Principals, and I was unsuccessful in 2024. So I then, was it unsuccessful in 2023? So then I did all of these things in 2024, my secondment, my master's, my presentation, did all these different things, the meetings. And I reapplied in 2024 and I was successful. And it was because, I don't know if you've heard Peter Hamilton, he does the sort of effective leaders. These are characteristics of effective leaders, there's 6. And I was able to look at all of those 6 and go, you know what, everything I've done this year links to me being a better leader. And I could then articulate it better. If I hadn't have given myself time, I wouldn't have come out with that outcome. And that course was phenomenal. Like it was a 7-day course over 2025. And it was just beautiful. You were with beautiful people, phenomenal presentations, opportunity to do a little project for yourself. Everything about it was phenomenal. And I'm so grateful. And that started from those principals giving me an hour of their time. And you cannot underestimate the value of that. So I completely believe in network. The system was so supportive. And now I'm wiser to support my leaders in that. You need to give yourself that time. You need to put yourself forward for that. You need to ask for that. You need to get the opportunity to do this. And so when you're in a school and they've got somebody's on long service leave, you need to put your hand up. You need to be vulnerable in that space because you never know where these opportunities might lead. And I think that because of my journey, people can see that I've done that and that there are benefits to doing that. So that it's really interesting. You've got to do that wider than your school.
Yeah. And it works too.
Well, touch wood, it's work process.
When you got the knockback at end of 2023, was that like, oh, okay, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to have these meetings? Or was it like, oh God, what am I going to do?
It was definitely like, oh my God, what more do I need to do? I've been doing, it was for a deputy position. I've been a deputy for the last 4 years, 5 years. what do I need to do? I'm asking to go from this school to that school, different environment, different place. But again, I'm a true believer in things happen for a reason. Going back to the story of all my bad decisions become good ones, make progress, the time will happen, you're doing better than you think you are, all of these little adages that are said. So for me, I'm going, okay, that's obviously not the right school for me, or not the right time, or not the right process. And actually looking back now, it wasn't. Although I would at the time think I would love the job, and I would have loved the job, and I've done a really good job because I would have worked hard, my journey has been better because of not having that. And so I think that you have to go, okay, what's my knockback? What am I learning from this? What is down the line for me that is better? And I keep going back to that. So every time if I put my hand up in something, if you get a knockback, okay, right, thank you very much. Give me feedback. What can I do better? That come back to that reflective. How can I be a better version of myself? And how can I show people externally to the school or externally to my world that I am the right person for the fit? Yeah. And I think that when the next job or the right job comes to me, everything will click in place. And if it doesn't, it's not the right one for me. That I'm a believer in that.
It's so simple but effective, just like reaching out to those principles in it, and broadens your network, gives you that feedback.
Yep.
It gives you time and space to think about it as well. Yep. Like, hey, well, what am I doing? What are the questions I'm going to ask? Or, what did I take away from that one? What's the common thread?
And what happened from that was the first question, it was the first principle was, they were quite basic questions. Obviously, by the time I got to the 8th or 9th principle, I was asking very different questions.
Yeah. They'd be going, who's this?
Yeah, well, so then my questions are really, and one of those principles has actually become a mentor for me for helping to support me further. And they were also they were a mentor for the APPP. So I saw them in this context. And then I saw them again I went to their school as a relief teacher, and I saw them again and I saw them again. And I was like, I need your help. You are a phenomenal leader, highly respected. Please, will you help me? And again, the time they've given me, I'm so grateful. And it makes me go, I need to do that to the next, whoever wants my time, they have it. Because I have been the recipient of the generosity of others. I now need to be the giver, because that's how the system strengthens, by being better all around.
Some stories deserve to be remembered. So many achievements, lessons, and stories go unrecognised. The challenges people overcome, the impact they have on others, and the contribution teams make are often never captured. That's why we created Leadership Recognition Stories, a way for businesses to recognise their people, celebrate their achievements, and capture the stories that help shape them. While gifts are appreciated, stories create something people can keep, share, and look back on for years to come. Perth Modern, so you mentioned UK too. There's some really sort of high-performing schools, like #1 school in Perth, Perth Modern. A lot of kids, 1,500 odd kids, very hard to get into. I'd imagine the stresses in that environment are probably, you're probably working with some kids that are go-getters and so forth, but it's a high standard to keep to.
And what's interesting is you often hear parents say, I'm not pushing my child, I'm not pushing my child. Teachers are going, just relax, it'll be fine, you've got it all the ingredients of the cake are there, it's going to be a beautiful cake. The students often put the pressure on themselves. They're very competitive, so they're competitive with themselves. It's actually a beautiful way that they're competitive with each other. But sometimes it is not the right environment. So you could have a really bright child. And like I say, the best school in the world, it may not be right for everybody. And so I think what you have to do with any school, and like I say, Perth Modern is a beautiful school, beautiful students, phenomenal culture, gorgeous staff, wonderful opportunities. How do you make a child have an opportunity that they can thrive in? Because what you often find in somewhere like Perth Modern is you haven't got 5 feeder schools, you've got sort of 80 feeder schools, because they're obviously from all around, or even more. And these young people have often been the biggest fish in the smallest pond. Then they come to Perth Modern and suddenly they are not #1 in maths anymore or #1 in science. They could be number 56. but they might still be getting 98%. But because there are people above them, and it's about going, okay, what are your strengths? And we really do. There's a lot of work that goes on with students of how are you, what is the best version of yourself? What are you looking to do? You will never be, in this world, no one is going to be number one at everything.
Yeah.
You're not. You could be the best person at maths at that point in time, because somebody has to be the top. But just because you're not the top, it doesn't mean that you won't be successful. It doesn't mean, you don't have to have an ATAR of 99.95 to go on and do whatever course. And we often talk about with students, what course do you want to go to at university? They may need an 80, ATAR of 80. Okay, you predicted an ATAR of 95. That's a buffer for you. Yeah. Enjoy your year 12. Take pleasure from studying, but also do not forget the other things in your life. And we often talk about that. I use the analogy of you Inc., who are you as a person, your brand as well. You are like an orange. Your studying is one segment. Your family is another segment. Your friends are another segment. The fact you play music is another segment. The fact you've got love of art, or you do drama out of school, or you play sport out of school, or you work, or you give to community service, or you do. Those are all equally as important. And the people that get, we've had some beautiful students, but there's a scholarship called the Tuckwell, which is for ANU, so Australia National University in Canberra. That scholarship is phenomenal. But the people that get that scholarship they've all got high, they're all at ATAR of, 95 plus, so hugely successful. But what gets them scholarships isn't their academic. It's all the other things in their life that are there. And so you use that term balance, and one of the students, we asked the students to come back and talk to the students. So year 12 had left, came back and spoke to the year 11 and 12s. And he mentioned the word balance. And he said, balance is like a seesaw, but you've got to be careful. Don't think life, like study and play, is 1 foot either side of the seesaw. It's not a balance of getting that right. That's not balance. Balance is when you're at work, school, you are all in. So go all into the one side of the seesaw. When you're at play, be all in with the play. Be all in with the sport. Be all in with the family. Don't be trying to be in too many camps, because the moment you're in too many camps, you're never really enjoying and you're never really effective. So it comes back to those quadrangles again. When you're in rest, be fully in rest. When you're in high performance, be fully in high performance. And by giving students strategies, they are phenomenal. I've said phenomenal young people. Success comes in many, many different forms. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to get a mark of 90 to get an ATAR of 90. That's a myth. For an ATAR of something like, I think it's 80, you need to have something like average of 60% in your subjects. You still get an ATAR of 80. It's knowing the system, knowing how to play it, and then go, you know what? Let's be competitive with yourself. Let's learn. What did you get wrong? Ask the questions. That's what we want. We want to get better ourselves. You want to get better. Giving feedback goes, what does it look like for you? Giving support of a student to say, how are you going to not work harder, but work more effective? And teaching young people strategies like that help them get it right. Yeah. And most students, most of the time, they do. They get it right beautifully well. So
that's transition into year 8,
7.
Year 7, sorry.
Year 7.
Yeah. I'm still in the old school.
Yeah. No, that changed in 2015, so 10 years ago. So come on, move with the modern times.
You educators, you change things all the time. Like when a kid should be in which grade.
I don't do anything.
But the transition, like you're saying, how do you get that across to them? Past students, passing on some knowledge of, hey, this is what I did and I wish I didn't do, or I wish I should do. Is that just stuff that you go through in the induction process? Is that scattered through each of their classes? How does that?
Always scattered. You cannot give all the information in one go. Yeah. So what we do, both schools I've worked in fact, and even the schools that my children have gone to, the activities that you create to ensure that the environment they're coming into, so let's say from primary to secondary, is not unfamiliar to them. So you invite the students in. We invite them in through open days. We invite
bridging
them in
the gap early.
Bridging the gap early. They're then very familiar. They're familiar with other people that they're likely to be with. They're familiar with the teachers, with the environment. So when they start on day one, they aren't walking into, I don't know anybody, I don't know what the place is, I'm scared I'm going to get lost, because that's what they often think. What happens if I get lost? You know what? Actually nothing. All you do is you ask somebody, or somebody will pick you up and they'll take you there. And within about 4 days, you're familiar with the campus. So it's about going, how do we support them with that transition? And the more that they see that campus and the dispelling of myths, the better. I'm actually this week going into the feeder primary schools as the principal and with another member of the team to talk about the myths of high school and what that looks like. So we show videos, we talk about what the school's going to be like. We say, ask questions. And one of the things, will we be bullied by the year 12s? No, the year 12s won't even notice you. Yeah. You know, you have separate areas for year 7s. The year 12s are beautiful, lovely. They will be supportive. If you're lost, they will help you. You know, that idea that big kids are scary. No, they're not. The big kids say that you're scary as year 7s. Yeah. So it's all about sort of the more you communicate, the better that you have relationships with your primary schools, the more the opportunities, even for things like, you know, we have, we're looking forward, we've got our musicals coming up. The primary schools will be invited, so they can just come and go, oh, look at this. When I come up to senior school, I could be that. That could be me. Yep. So we do soccer trials, we do science experiments, we do competitions. Doesn't matter what it looks like. You're inviting the children to come and be part of it. And all you're really doing is saying, this could be you. How will you belong here? Which is the bit that really inspires you to want to be at this school, and what way can you see yourself? That's what you want to do. Get rid of those myths that high school is scary. It's not. Teenagers are beautiful.
Yeah, but the competition aspect of it, you guys don't have to encourage that at all, I'd imagine. From like that, I'm just thinking like that Perth modern environment, Nicola, like, you know, there's probably expectations of it's a high-performing school. Kids, it's hard to get in. I'm sure the parents are driving the kids as well. Like there's lots of sort of pressures, but you guys as, you know, teachers and leadership within the school, you don't need to necessarily push that.
You don't, and you do strategies as well. You're absolutely right. Perth Modern, there are a lot of, I don't know how many people sit the gate test, and 250 students, about a bit less than that, 235, 240 can go in. So you clearly, but it's not the only place. There are gifted programs throughout the Department of Education. There's phenomenal art ones. There's phenomenal language ones. There are other academic ones. So the fact that it's the only all selective, yes, it has obviously the reputation. And yes, of course, there are people, and there are some families who will pay tuition from year 4, 5, 6 to help their child get in. What you know, though, is that with the test, yes, you can make them familiar with the testing process. You can't really support the child in to answer questions. If they can't do it, if they don't have that mind for, the testing, as in the types of test, they aren't going to, automatically be there. We find that the students that are doing super well, they do super well at Perth Modern. They do well in the test, they do well at the school. Not always. Sometimes the school environment's not for them. They have, we do testing in year 7, obviously big intake year 7, biggest intake. There's no intake in year 8, but there is a intake in year 9, year 10, and year 11, smaller. And you do that because there are a lot of country schools, people that families where their children are really bright, but they don't want them to live away from home. There is a boarding house that supports the Department of Education students in various programs, and that's phenomenal. So therefore, we have other students that come in year 9 and year 10. And it is competitive in the way that it is, people want to do the best. And like I say, students are very motivated to do well. But the competition is not, it's a beautiful kind of competition. Like it's so supportive. When you watch, certainly at the end of the year, when year 12s leave, they always say thank you to their cohort. you know, the students go, thank you so much. I did not want to be on this journey with anyone else other than you. And at the end, the year 12, they give a little sort of speech and skit and everything else. And the stories that come out of what they did when they're in year 8 in the camp and year 9, and the, you know, the noodles that they ate and the chats that they had and the support they gave each other. It's just beautiful. It's really gorgeous. And then when they come back to, in 2024, I came back to a 10-year reunion. I was the head of year in 2014, came back. Oh my gosh, it was like there were 100 people there. It was absolutely phenomenal, wonderful. Yeah. And everybody had success in their own way. So the more you dispel competition is I'm the winner and you're the loser. Because it's not like that.
No.
Life is not like that. There is room for everybody to have success. And that's what you want to do. How do you be the most successful version of yourself? And the more you say that, the more they focus on them rather than others.
No, it's lovely to hear. And it's something that I suppose that irks me a little bit when you hear people talk about competition, because this day and age, competition, it's toxic. It's, someone loses, someone this, someone that. But it's a really positive thing. It's like anything with humans involved. It can be toxic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
We're the issue, not the competition,
no.
right?
But it's no different than every job I go for. Any job we go for, there is competition in that job.
It's part
There could have been 50 people applied and I didn't even get an interview. There could be 10 people and I did get an interview, but I didn't get the job. That's all competition.
It's life.
But it is life. It's the way you deal with it. So what is it that I need to be? And that's why I come back to the idea. Last year I was at the Wazir conference again, and Adam Simpson was one of the speakers, guest speaker. And he showed a graph, and it was, young people think life is this sort of progress time and it's just like this. And then there was another picture, but really it's like this, and you've got this squiggle going backwards and forwards, and you're always progressing, but you're sometimes going backwards. To go forward, and sometimes you're going slower than you think you should to go forward. And the more you show that and say, look, if you don't get into that course, it's because there's a better course for you. If you don't get that, it's because something's better around the corner for you. Or you weren't there yet. You weren't quite ready yet. And that's not to say that you won't be. That's to say that you need to think about what do you need to do to be better at the best version of yourself. Because, we need everybody in the world. We need everybody in their way to have their strengths to make the world go round. We can't all be doctors. We can't all be lawyers. We can't all be engineers. We need our trades. We need our people that are helping with the farmers, the suppliers. It doesn't matter which industry you're in.
Just as important.
Everybody has their role to play for society. And I think that I often say, the plumber's the most important person in the world if your bathroom's, your loos blocked or something like that.
Yeah.
But the teacher's the most important person in the world if you're trying to get through an exam, and they're the ones that are helping you. It depends on where you are, what you're doing in life. So enjoy the process.
Yeah. Motivated kids, expectation around that school about doing really well. But I wouldn't imagine that, okay, well, you just get these year 7s in and it looks after itself, and then all of a sudden academically we're number one school.
No.
What do you reckon goes into it? Like, you've mentioned the culture and how that is, and drip feeding some stuff. But from a teaching point of view, like compared to, I don't know, let's say another school that doesn't have that sort of expectation, do you find that obviously will brush off onto the teachers?
It's a gifted school. Everybody has training, what they call GERIC training, or GERIC, and that's from the University of New South Wales. So everybody's done two days of training of gifted education. Because gifted students and they do think differently. You do not do things at the same pace. You do everything much more quickly. So there is absolutely training that's needed. The programs are set up so that we at Perth Modern, you compact the curriculums, what's called telescoping. So in year 7, normal West Australia curriculum is finished by the end of year 10. Then you go on to your senior schooling. At Perth Modern, it's finished by the end of year 9. And then year 10 courses are very different. So you're enriching, you're expanding, you're, compacting, you're doing all this all the way. Now, interesting, all programs across West Australia, all gifted programs, they will do some versions of that. Every school will do enrichment activities. So that is not unique to any one school. Every school does enrichment. Every school does compacting in a different way. What they do, the important thing is, and you look at it from a principal's perspective, we have the systems strategic plan. You know, we've got what they call aspirations for all. Absolutely, that's aspirations for all. A student at Perth Modern's aspirations may be different than a student at Les Murdy or Dianella or wherever it might be, but those aspirations are just as important. And you've got the system, then you've got the processes that we all follow through. The key for a good leader, a great principal, will know all of this. They'll have a great understanding of all of this, but they have a really solid understanding of their context. And so therefore, in their context, they'll go, right, this is what our students need. I'm going to use the department, obviously, because I'm part of a bigger system, but a great principal will be able to use their resources, teachers, their physical resources, their financial resources, in a way that will give them the best opportunity for each of those students' aspirations for all. It doesn't matter. Perth Modern is one context. And again, the teachers, the principal knows how to get the best with the resources that they've got to get the best out of those students for aspirations for all. The principal at Dianella, the principal at Les Murdy, Kalamunda, they will do the same. And they, you know, we talk about, we've got opportunity cost, we've got scarce resources. You will always hear people go, if we had more money, if we had, you know, we could do this, we could do that. So the trick is to go, right, with this pile of money, with these physical resources, you've got, you know, these X number of classrooms, you've got these facilities. The brilliant principals will go, you know what, I can see that, and I'm going to utilize all of those in a special way, I suppose, the ingredients of a cake, and they will make a great cake. And the competition will be there for those students, whether they want to go on a TAFE course, whether they want to go to university, job, whatever it might look like. You are trying to give every child the best possible chance that you can give. And great leaders look at their resources and go, right, let's see how we can do this. And staffing, of course, staff have to be trained always. The way best practices in the classroom, instructional teaching, we call, you know, high impact teaching or explicit teaching models, whatever it looks like, they are critical, and teachers need to understand that. And so often what you say is you see the resources, whether it's through staff development days, whether it's through individual training, these teachers come back and they say, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to help and support. And it is never one thing. I think it was James Clear that talks about the 1 degree. You know, if you put your nose, if you're flying from Los Angeles, you're heading, and 1 degree, you end up in, I think it was Washington or something like that, and you were heading. That's what it's like. You're constantly looking at the data. Right, this is our data. This is brilliant, phenomenal, but we could do better here. Whether that be in attendance, whether it be in NAPLAN results, whether it be in ATAR, whether it be in our general, whether it be in our waste achievement, doesn't matter, whether it's in year 7 assessment. Everybody's looking at their data. Everybody's looking at behaviour data as well. You know, what does it look like?
Yeah, reviewing
how can we do it? And it's that constant. And then as teachers, we have what we call professional learning communities, and you're in small clusters looking, and experts come and say, this is what I do. Go off and try something that you want to do, bring it back. And by having that collaborative approach, you really get rid of the silos, because schools can often be silos. You know, maths is their silo, science, English, PE, whoever it might be.
PE, they're the weird ones.
No, they're not. They're lovely. They're beautiful. We love the PE teachers. But they're in silos. But what you actually go is when you bring them together, what you hear is what works in PE, it may or may not work in maths. Or it may be adjusted to work in maths or science or whatever.
Or
Brilliant
even
things
just
happen.
that they're working with the same kids too, right?
With the same kids.
Yeah, and hey, I found that this works with this kid, or hey, no, they're actually going through this at the moment, I've figured out. And
we do a lot of that. And there's a lot of that where students, and again, you come back, PE teachers often get great relationships because their classroom doesn't have the same 4 walls. Yeah. You know, if you're out on a soccer oval or a rugby pitch, and they've got classroom management is very different than if it is in a 4 walls classroom of when I was teaching economics. But you've still got that same, this works, that does not work.
Yeah.
But it might work there and it may not. So by sharing good practice all the time, you are building a great culture of continuous improvement, which is always necessary. That's your 1 degree shift all the time. But you're also creating that collaborative culture so that when a student is misbehaving in one class, you've got a team of people to support that child or that teacher. If it doesn't work, what are we doing to support that teacher? They need support, whether it be different strategies, whether it be, somebody else in the classroom for a little bit, whether it's them understanding what has happened. You're absolutely right. PE teachers, somebody might disclose something's not going great at home. My rabbit died, the great ant flow died, whoever, whatever.
Yeah.
This person doesn't know that. They've gone in, we've got 10 rabbits in the field and, then 3 fields, how many rabbits have we got? That person then suddenly might play up. And when you have that better communication between the teachers, students are better off because of it.
Yeah.
Always about student outcomes.
It's very similar. Like you think about a sporting side, going through a season, preparing for a season, you think about a business, preparing or, performing through a financial year, same sort of thing.
Same
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So that leadership there from the deputy and the principals to really sort of drive that is,
So Adam Simpson said something similar again. He said, you've got these, I don't know, is there 18 AFL, 16? Anyway, you've got the AFL team. Yeah. He said every one of them, 90% of what they do is exactly the same. They all are, they've all got players, they've all got the same game, same rules, they're all trying to win the same matches. The 10% is often the differentiator. And schools are the same. We've all got the same curriculum. We've all got the teachers. We've all got students. We've all got parents. We've all got resources. What you do, that 10%, is what can make a real difference. And the leaders, yes, the vision of the principal, the vision of what they call the exec team, absolutely. But they don't come up with all of the ideas at all. They're the ones that actually, really great principals will listen and they will hear so many different things. And great principals go, okay. And they might just store it away. And then suddenly they'll go, okay, we can make this happen here. We can make that happen there. And it is never from just one, never that one. It's those little tiny shifts. And by good principals listening and I suppose not having their ego in the room, they're actually going, right, what is best? Because great ideas can come from anywhere and everywhere because everybody has a different perspective. So if you listen and you're prepared to go, often nothing happens straight away because schools, there's a process, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But what you're really doing is going, okay, where could this sit and what might this look like in the future? Yeah. That's exciting. It's exciting stuff. Yeah. That's why teaching is wonderful.
Dealing with teenagers and some of I can imagine what, vaping, mobile phones to, obviously a lot more serious mental health sort of stuff, that broad range and dealing with that. How does that go?
Massive. So that's definitely changed. Social media, I'm a real advocate for this. Don't have social media until they're past 16. Yep. I get that those young ones that are in between now, the 14, 15-year-olds, that won't change. But for the younger ones, I think they will definitely come up with a different world. Social media and online behaviours have definitely changed. So what you often find, schools, something will happen at home on a Saturday night or in the holidays, nothing to do with the school, but it comes onto the school's table. Now, we obviously, whenever anything comes into the school, you have to deal with it. If there's something that's impacting a child, you deal with it. So we would deal with that. And the first thing you're doing is you're communicating with parents. Are you aware this is what your child has sent? Are you aware this is what your child has done? Most people, I hear 2 things. That wasn't meant for anybody else. That was in a private chat. Okay. It is not private when it's on my desk. So don't think anything is private. That message, you do a lot of work in schools for that. There's a phenomenal speaker, Paul Litherland. He was West Australia of the Year. He has a phenomenal business, and he comes in and talks to a lot of young people, and he's brilliant. But he goes in age and stage. So, what year 7s, what you're likely to experience, be aware this is you. And again, what you do in 12s, be aware because it's very different. And that was what I was saying, that young girl did something online that was inappropriate and thought that she was going to, no, you're not. You're going to need to learn from it. You are the person you are face to face and online. You are that person. So if you wouldn't say it to somebody's face, don't think you can say it online. That kind of message gets across. And I think young people, their idea of what their digital footprint looks like is really, it's massive. So the more you can get across to people what your digital footprint is, and you are that person, the better the message. So that has definitely changed over the last 10 years ago. I barely deal with it. Now it will be something you deal with fairly regularly.
Pretty common.
Vaping again, that's no different, I suppose, than smoking. And, that's on the list of the misdemeanors. And then you just deal with it. It's the process. You just go through it. You inform parents, you go through that process. The harder things to deal with young people is when, if they've disclosed something, there's processes to deal with there. But there are ways that young people disclose, and you often have to do protective interrupting because, and you cannot, there was training. So staff in my team, in Student Central teams, always have had training on what that looks like, how you interview a person who may have had something happen to them or wants to disclose something, because you have to be very careful not to put words into people's mouths and listen. So there is a lot of information. And that, again, is quite tricky to deal with. The only thing you can do with all of these young people is you just go, tell me what you need here and now. What do you need? And how can I help you with that? Because everybody has their own journey. So in a school, and you talk about what do principals do, what do deputies, or teachers, when they have to deal with anything that is tricky, really tricky, you absolutely rely on the processes that are put into place. You absolutely fall back to what do we do in these circumstances? Because those are the times when you don't want to be, trying to fill the way as you go. You actually go, right, this is what we do. This is how we communicate with these. This is how we communicate with that. This is what we do here. This is the process. This is the thing. So teachers have often, I think they take the lion's share of the burden of the young people in that respect. And the more we, as schools, as systems, we have, if anything horrible happens in school, there's the system immediately comes into place. There's a whole psychology of teams that people come in. There's a lot of work that you can do to support young people and staff. There is the education system has what we call EAP, the Pet People Sense. And staff are absolutely encouraged to go and speak to somebody, because you cannot, that is not your burden to hold. But you need processes and strategies to support staff and young people to I suppose, to process what that looks like. So, so many complexities. So I think that comes back to the myth of, what's it like in teachers? They deal with a huge amount. And we're educators. We're trained as educators in curriculum. Yeah, we may have some training in and there's phenomenal training out there. And you hope never to have to really pull on the training. But there are certain, and that's why I think in schools you have teams of people that are better at it. I would not do anything when it comes to any sort of social emotional without the school psychologist having an input somewhere along the line. There are experts that you call on. And I think that's one of the really great things about the system in schools. Know who your experts are and go to your experts so that you're never in it alone.
I just think back to probably when you started. It's 20 odd years ago. It's like there's no phones. You don't have that complexity and the social media side of things. You think parents when growing up, the discipline levels were probably a little bit higher.
Depends. Some parents are just as equally as disciplined.
But there's a bit more freedom, I'd reckon, these days.
I think there's a couple of things that I would have noticed. One is there's definitely a different sense of entitlement. Okay, so there's a sense
of respect for authority.
I think there is a respect for authority, but it's different. Young people have a stronger voice than they had. So we were always taught seen and not heard. That's what you grew up, seen and not heard. And the adult, that has definitely shifted. And I think that's probably right. I think we want people to have a voice. You want the young person to be able to advocate for themselves, but you want them to advocate for themselves in a respectful way. That's the trick of leading, so that when they go out in the big wide world, and if they have a conflict with a member of their team or a leader, or whether it be an official person in society, you want them to be able to advocate for themselves in a way that they are heard. The moment someone starts screaming and shouting, they're not going to be heard anymore. That's not the way to be heard. So it's about teaching young people how to, I suppose, win the argument, have their perspective heard in that respect. Because it's not all about right or wrong. We often know it's never black and white, never black and white. The more that you hear what somebody has to say, makes you go, oh, okay, that was what I was coming back to earlier. We say, give yourself time. Don't rush into decisions. Ask your experts. So whenever you're dealing with anything that is out of the order or anything complex, child, you need to make sure that you're getting expert advice, because then you get follow the process. If we have a child at school who is what we call on a risk management plan, so they may have suicidal ideations, or they may be self-harming or something like that. Absolutely, there's processes that you go through to support that child in the classroom. And you make sure staff know, so that they feel competent and confident in what they're dealing with. Therefore, they won't go out of their lane, as it were, because they know that this is what that child needs. They don't need to ask the child about it. They just need to do their bit. And if everybody's doing their bit, then collectively we are again supporting that child how they need to be supported. So if great schools will have really tight processes that the staff can feel confident to rely on, doesn't matter what the situation, doesn't matter whether it's, like I said, it's vaping, or whether it's the worst case scenario of mandatory reporting or suicide or something like that. There is a process for everything, and we just need to wrap around the young people and the families and the community and the staff and all the rest of it.
It's, you sort of alluded to it before with, how wonderful young kids are. And sometimes you don't hear that, right? Which is, they're a product of the environment of, parents, most likely working full-time jobs, both of them. Was that like that 20, 30 years ago on a previous generation?
Possibly not.
Possibly not. Divorce rates might be a little bit different. Social
Absolutely.
media, phones.
Absolutely.
They're a product of that environment, like what we would be if we were growing up in that environment now.
And it all adds to the complexity of the job. Absolutely, no question.
For someone who's just trying to be an educator, right?
But what you're looking at, though, again, is if we're in a position where we go, okay, in the classroom, some of that stuff you can't deal with. I cannot deal with parents, like if they're divorced, that's not my business. Your conflicts outside of school are not my business. My business is how I've got my resources and how I can best educate that child. Because education is absolutely a pathway, regardless of what the education looks like. I'm not saying there's one form of education. Education generally is a form of getting people into a new environment, whatever that might look like, whether it be on an apprenticeship and then you get a trade, or whether it be through a degree and you go into whatever profession it is that you're looking for. But yes, people need help. And I think when you hear about poor behaviour, for me, yes, you deal with poor behaviour all the time. Okay. But you often need to ask what's behind that behaviour. Why are they behaving badly? So why is a person behaving badly in a class? There's often a reason. It's not about the behaviour. That, yes, you have to deal with. Of course you have to deal with. But what you really have to deal with is why. Why is that person? Is it because they're struggling to read and write and they don't know what's going on in the classroom? Is it because something has happened at home and you're having a go at them because they haven't got the right, shoes on or shorts on or whatever it might be? Or something's happened at home, and in that morning they have managed to get 3 siblings to school, feed the children, be a carer for a parent. They've got to school late, and the first thing they hear is, you're late. That's where I think the world has shifted. Because one of the years ago when I first came to Australia, when you look at something like attendance, and the language for attendance was very much about getting the child to school. Nowadays, the language is much more about supporting families, in a very different way. So we've always wanted to support families, but it's about much more about, wraparound care. How can we help you? What do we need to do? And, work together. If your child needs to be on a modified timetable, let's help them do that so that they can have success. So the language has definitely changed. Schools, something that's really, really strong in schools is what they call PBS, positive behaviour strategies. And that's all about sort of wellbeing. So you often hear a lot more these days. I know wellbeing is my sort of social emotional learning, but years ago, it was a lot about the curriculum. Now you'll hear a lot more about child wellbeing, because we know that if a child is in a good space, they'll learn in the classroom. Yeah, quite simple. If they're not in a good space, no different than us as adults. If we're not in a good space, you aren't getting the best from us. So, our job, I think, as educators is to ensure that the environment is as conducive as it possibly can be for learning. And if a child is not able to learn, there's usually a reason behind it. What can we do to support that child to help that learning process? That's where I go with this.
Yeah, and it's like an awesome approach, right? But again, more complexities, more time,
It is.
more everything. And compared to previous, it's just, I suppose it's just eye-opening to hear just how much goes into it, right?
Yeah, there is a lot. And it is a complex world. And it's a complex, and school is a small section of this bigger complex world that we're in. But I think that most of the time, again, most of the time we do it right for most of the children, and what we do is we go, let's keep learning. Let's always do that 1 degree shift. What can we do better? They talk about, what supports schools need, whether they need social workers in there, or whether they need more psychologists or more nurses or more, whatever it might be.
What's it going to look like? Yeah.
I don't know. What is it going to look like? I don't know. Don't know. For me, this is my personal opinion. I think the more different types of learning institutions we have that suit more people, the better. Now, the problem is there's cost involved in all of that. It comes back to opportunity cost. What you really want to do is hit the most you can with the biggest bang for your buck, don't you? But that's the politicians. They can fight that one out. I don't need to fight those.
It would be interesting to see, where is, in 20 years' time, you see the shift from when you started to now where you're at compared to, in 20, 25 years' time, what's that going to be like?
Yeah, mentioned AI. AI will be a big influencer for us all, because it's already influencing the classroom now. So, the technology, I don't think you're going to have to wait 20 years for that.
No, correct.
I think, the classroom will be different in 10 years.
You're dealing with that just on, I suppose, the legitimacy of work that students, and, how far can they use it, and, it's a tool.
Don't do so many take-home assessments now. Much more about validations. So you can do all this preparation, right, then you have an assessment to validate it. How much did you do? What do you understand from that? And there's ways, it's about levels of understanding. And classrooms, what we all do in our curriculum, I think what has shifted a bit is no longer learning, how volcanoes erupt or Pythagoras or whatever, but actually what you really learn is those soft skills. So what does it mean? What are we looking at? Creativity, innovation, team working, problem solving, collaboration, can't remember if I said that already, conflict resolution, whatever they may be. Every single class has soft skills it's learning. So when you're in a maths class, you're problem solving, you're collaborating all the time. You're doing the same when you're in woodwork or on the sports field. You're still learning all of those skills. And I think that, the importance of that can be learned in many different environments. And I think schools are a phenomenal place for that, but they aren't the only place.
Yeah.
That happens and we grow on that all the time. So I don't know what that might look like. Who knows?
How did you go navigating, career, you got your own family, you got daughters going through an education system that like the back of your hand. How did you go as a parent?
I was a terrible parent, terrible engagement. And
I know too much about the process.
And it's interesting. My children would often come home and they would whinge about something. And I would go, right, what do you want me to do? Shall I go in? And the mama bear and me was like, I'm already in the car, my seatbelt's on, I'm ready to go and, strip whatever. But actually, most of the time they went, no, I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with this. Occasionally, I probably did intervene probably 2 or 3 times, over situations where I'm going, no, I don't think you've got that quite right. And, so they would say, this has to happen. Nah, you can recommend that, but that's not actually, you can't stop this happening. Those kind of things. I have my 2 girls. My eldest didn't finish school. She dropped out of school in year 12, was not for her. But at the same time, she was also already doing a Cert 4 privately. She went on and did her diploma in nursing, is about to finish her Bachelor of Nursing, has already got postgraduates. School wasn't for her because she worked in a very different way. She was faster than school was a bit too frustrating for her. And she's managed to, she's a great individual. She is beautifully articulate, wonderful employee. I have no worries about her.
Yeah,
she will go far in life. She works hard. She's driven, dynamic. She will do what she needs to do, and she'll know what she needs to do. My youngest one, again, we pulled her out of one school to put her in another school because the ATAR courses didn't suit. We wanted it very much horses for courses. Did very well. I was definitely the pushy mother and was like, come on, you've got to go straight to university. You're doing this, you're doing that. And she kept going, I don't want to. I'm not ready. And so eventually she did it for a week or 2 and then went, no, not for me. And so she pulled out and I'm like, okay, right, what do I do here? I'm navigating. And when she was ready, she started semester 2. She's doing law, thriving, absolutely thriving through it.
That's lovely.
So I feel like they have taught me a lot about being patient because in my world, I have that knowledge and therefore I already know the answers. So I'm going, you just need to do this. They talk about a helicopter parent. And I try not to do that because when you have a career, you're almost too busy to be the helicopter parent. But there's also the expression of lawnmower parent. I don't know if you've heard lawnmower parent. No. And you clear the path before your child comes. Yeah. You've mowed the lawn and the hedges and everything. And in my head, I'm like, I could do this for you like this.
It's
and
more
like,
efficient. Let's do it.
Yeah. And they're like, no. I've raised 2 very independent young ladies that have their own opinions. So they tell me very much when I'm allowed to advocate for them and when I need to sit back in my box and do as I'm told. And however much I have to sit on my hands and I'm not very good at it, at the end of the day, what do I want? I want to raise people that can advocate for themselves and survive in the world. And I have 2 children that I have, they do that brilliantly without their mother's wisdom or education experience or anything like that.
Well, all your wisdom's already intertwined in there already.
Maybe it was. Maybe those incidental conversations that happened, at every mealtime, maybe there was a little bit that went through. But the reality is they know their own minds and they are great and they will succeed in whatever pathway they want to go to. Being a working mum and being a teacher, I often miss things that I never drop my children off on day 1 of school. That's day 1 of school is always a big thing in high school. And I never did that. My husband did, by far better parent than I am. He was always the one at the school gate, not me. I was in the P&C, but he was there. But I was always at the assemblies. I was at most of the sports days. I was there. And if anything happened, I would be there. But the day-to-day, I wasn't there for. And people go, oh, that time goes so quickly. And it's so true. There are things I can't take back on. But in my own mind, my consolation is that in the holidays, I was able to do a little bit more with them. I'd work around sort of doing some work and, doing a bit more play. So I'd have a lot more quality time with them then. Did I get it right all the time? Absolutely not. I did not. And I would have times where I did what they call level 3 classroom teacher. My little girl, she must have been in about 5 or 6. She's there with a little rucksack on and I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm leaving. What do you mean you're leaving? I'm going to my friend's house. What do you do? She said, well, you're always busy, Mum. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this moment, I was like, oh, I've so got this wrong. And they do remind me when I get it wrong. And I although I don't like necessarily being told, I have to pay attention because that comes back. They're usually right. And, I've learned lessons along the way. I've got it wrong and I've learned lessons. So
We're all just trying to figure it out to
all
the best of our
trying to
ability
figure it out,
as
absolutely.
we go.
And, there we go. They're good and they still love me. And I still love them deeply, passionate and gorgeous young people that they are. They're phenomenal.
They're lovely young ladies.
I think
they certainly are.
I think they're not too bad.
Yeah,
not
you've
too
done
bad.
well.
So,
Well,
there we go.
Nicola, been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very
we could
much.
talk
I
for a
feel
lot
like
longer.
I know. I feel like I've taken up way too much of your time. I'm
no,
so sorry.
I really appreciate your time on a Sunday afternoon and, really highlighting the complexities of what teachers and the leadership within, education go through. It's certainly a tough job and even tougher now with all the stuff that's involved. So
very, very fulfilling job.
Yeah.
Very worthwhile.
Yeah.
Very worthwhile.
No, well, I really appreciate your time. So
Lovely being here. Thank you very much for asking me.
no, my pleasure. It's been great.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow or subscribe. And if you know someone else who would enjoy it, send it their way. We really appreciate the support.